Hard things are invitations to get stronger, to come out the other side of the refining fire. You say you want growth. You say you want success. Good. Because everything you want is sitting behind a door marked hard things. You have to get good at doing hard things. Most people have no idea what it means to deal with hard things. Most people don't. And as soon as things get hard, a lot of people quit. They don't know how to handle it. If you want to become the kind of person who does hard things effortlessly, this episode is for you. Let's go.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornis, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
A lot of people have been born into things being easier than others. And I definitely relate to that. I've not had it that easy, but I'm also, aware that I have some privilege that other people don't. But I understand my perspective and I understand my own biases for the most part and challenges. And I definitely try to have awareness about those things. But hard is a wonderful opportunity. And we need to talk about exactly what hard means. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to talk about something truly important, your mental well-being. Life can be overwhelming, and sometimes we all need a little extra support to navigate the ups and downs. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about BetterHelp. That's HELP. And they are sponsoring some of our episodes this spring. And we're super excited about this. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform. And right now you can grab 10% off your first month by just going to my affiliate link, betterhelp.com/art of. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of, ARTOF. Now, let's get back to what hard really means. One of the greatest things that I ever learned from my coach is pretty much, quote, one of the most delicious things in the world is succeeding through something hard, because all of the things that come with that, there's nothing better. It's phenomenal and it's life-changing. We need to expect the resistance, and then we need to override it and power through it, but in a systematic way. I can tell you, suck it up. Life is 50-50. Things are going to be difficult. Well, yeah, but if you don't know how to deal, if you don't know how to override the default, if you don't know how to manage your brain, even if you expect the resistance, you're not going to be able to change your default. This is how you develop resilience and how you set yourself up for massive change and massive success. This is basically like your brain being a GPS system. It's Siri in your phone or whatever. If it believes that you can't get to the destination, it won't even start the journey. It won't even try. How do we smash this entire awful cycle? You reframe. So your brain resists these hard things until you train it not to. You will live forever unconsciously in your survival mechanism until you understand that you manage all of that and you can change it at any time by moving into your prefrontal cortex, your adult brain, your thinking brain. This is how you develop resilience and you set yourself up for massive change and massive success. But it's totally counterintuitive, which means you have to step up your thinking game and start managing your brain. Now I want to jump into one of my favorite areas of discussion is philosophy, and we're going to throw a little physics in there too. I'll show you what I mean. But let's start with a quote. It's a little deep, but follow me on this. The first basis from which a thing is known must itself be self-evident and not subject to prior explanation. That was from Aristotle's first principles concept that he writes about in metaphysics. And Aristotle, in case you're not familiar, lived in the 3rd century before the Common Era. So his concept of first principles method teaches that real progress comes from breaking ideas down to their core truth and then rebuilding from there. So most people reason with analogy. That's copying ideas from what works for other people. Sometimes that works and great. But what's an analogy? Let me just remind you. It is a comparison that helps us understand something new by relating it to something we already know. So here's an example. Learning to ride a bike is like learning to swim. At first, it feels tricky and scary, but with practice, it becomes easy and natural. All right. Now, if you're telling that to somebody who's never ridden a bike before and never put effort into learning how to ride a bike, often they just believe you as if it's proven evidence, right? It may or may not be true, but that's how we live our life by analogy. Here's another example. A coach helping an athlete is like a teacher helping a student. Both give advice and guidance. Both help people improve at something. Yeah, okay. When people reason by analogy, they solve problems by copying what's worked before from what they've seen or heard, but probably not experienced. Because if we're making assumptions, it means we don't have personal experience. So we're copying what we think has worked before or what we've been told has worked before, even if it's not the best way of doing things. So many people function this way all day long. So why is this a problem? Sometimes old solutions or hearsay don't fit the problems at hand or the new problems that you're about to face. So instead of copying what others do, we need to break the problem down and find our own way. This is called first principles thinking, which is what Aristotle was talking about, right? True innovators, they strip everything down to its fundamental components, as in the facts of the matter, the evidence, what actually works, and then we start fresh. So how do we solve this problem with our thinking? We stop assuming and we start questioning. Gosh, everything always comes down to questioning, right? Challenging, pushing back, asking, where did this come from? Because when we're assuming, it means we don't have effort invested in something. We don't know what it is. So instead of just assuming, ask, what is the core truth here? Break it down. What happens if I remove the assumptions? I find the facts, the evidence, what really works, not just what I've been told. And I start from scratch from there. Now we're not rebuilding the wheel. We're finding the wheel and starting from there, right? What works on a car? Well, we know the wheels work. And that's like the fundamental part of moving in a car. And then we find out what else works and we go from there instead of like people telling us how a car works. We figure it out. We check it out. We get under the hood, right? Find the first principles and start thinking in that way. Your personal growth is being slowed down by your assumptions that you've never challenged, that you've never questioned. You've got to break things down. Aristotle would have called this finding the unmoved mover and rebuilding from there. So what is the unmoved mover? I love this one. Imagine that you're playing dominoes. You set them up in a long line, and when you push the first one, all the others fall in a chain reaction. But think about this. Who made the first domino move? It didn't just fall by itself. Something had to start it, like your finger pushing on it, right? So what does this have to do with Aristotle? Aristotle believed that everything in the world is moving and changing, just like dominoes. But he asked a big question, which 99.9% of us never ask big questions. What started everything to move? If everything is moving and changing, what pushed the first domino? His answer, there must be something that started the whole universe without needing to be moved itself, which is what he called the unmoved mover, which would be breaking something down to its fundamental elements. Here's another example. Think about a hamster running on a wheel. The wheel only moves because the hamster's running. But what if we keep asking? What if we dive into those bigger questions? What made the hamster start running? What made that happen? I mean, at some point, we have to reach something that wasn't pushed by something else, by anything else. That's the unmoved mover in Aristotle's thinking. So that would also equate to breaking something down to, if you put a square block on a car and you put a round thing on a car, well, it will only move with the round thing, right? And something has to push it, but you get the point. Like, that is the fundamental of a car. Like, it's not going to work with a square. The bottom line, the unmoved mover is like the very first cause of everything. That's what we're trying to find when we're struggling with assumptions, right? We have to get to the evidence, the thing that started all the movement and the change, but wasn't moved by anything else. Often we find these things with math because 2 + 2 will always be 4. You can't change that. That doesn't move or change. So first principles thinking is the key to real progress. Instead of reasoning by analogy, which is, it's basically made up words, analogy, assumption. You break things down to their fundamental truths and you build from there. So now you're thinking, how does this apply to you? Most people try to change their lives using surface level tweaks, but true transformation comes from ideas like first principle thinking, breaking problems down to their absolute core truth and rebuilding from the ground up once we have found those foundational elements that we know work. And then we go from there. That is what smart people do. They don't reinvent the wheel. They find what works. They put those pieces, those elements together. This works, this works, this works, this works, right? And they're starting from a place with 100% evidence of things working. Therefore, they will work. It's not an assumption that someone has told you that you have bought. If you want to become the kind of person who does hard things effortlessly, you must identify your own unmoved mover, the fundamental, non-negotiable belief that everything else in your life is built on. So here's a mind shift thought. Most people operate from secondhand assumptions. This is just how success works. I should follow what other people are doing. Let me follow the formula. It's hard to make money. Don't talk about money. I'm just not a confident person. No. Bullshit. The fix, stop reasoning by analogy. Stop assuming that what works or failed for other people, that you have no effort in the game, no skin in the game, no experience, no skill, no training, that's going to apply to you too. Instead, challenge, push back, ask, catch the thought. What is the absolute core truth here? What are the facts? What is the evidence? What is undeniably true that everything else must be built upon? So here's an example. Instead of saying, I need to work harder to make money, that means nothing. Okay? Yeah, I need to work harder to make money. Do you? What does it mean? Where's the evidence that you have to grind yourself into the ground in order to make more money? That's not a thing. Those are words made up, strung together. Bullshit. First principles thinking would break it down to the fundamental elements of the concept. So we're going to ask questions. What is money? Money is the exchange of value. Okay, well, how is value created in order to exchange it for money? Well, you solve a problem that needs solving. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what problem am I uniquely positioned to solve? And then you solve the problem in exchange for value and money. That's how you make money. This work harder to make money means nothing. A string of bullshit words somebody made up or your brain made up. It means nothing. Now that I understand the fundamental elements, right? Value, exchange for money, solve problems. What am I uniquely qualified and positioned to solve to exchange as value for money? That's a whole different way of thinking about things. You can grapple with that. You can sit down and start writing a list of how you are uniquely trained, how you are uniquely experienced to solve problems. And then you can exchange that for money, which is different than just saying you got to work hard. It means nothing. Don't use bullshit words and convince yourself of stuff that's not true or useful. So your personal growth is being slowed down by living in the world of assumptions that you never challenge, that you never question. So we've got to break things down. I want you to find the unmoved mover in your life. What are the fundamental elements that you have evidence for? Challenge all the rest and rebuild from there. All right, here's that part about physics I promised you. It has to do with how everything is subjective that we're talking about. It's all subjective. It's all relative. And I'm sure most of you have at least heard of Einstein's theory of relativity. And let's talk about why your hardships feel like they last forever. Albert Einstein said, time is relative. The faster you move, the slower it feels. And he proved that time is not absolute. It's a construct that shifts depending on speed and gravity. So how does this apply to you? When you're in pain, self-doubt, or failure, time seems slower, making struggles seem permanent. But what's the truth? Nothing is permanent. And your brain is distorting time based on your emotional state. That book that I love, Super Thinking, they talk about, and I'm sure they got this from somewhere else, but these are two MIT folks that I love reading, MIT folks. They talk about imagining that you're in a train and you're looking out the window and everything seems to be rushing by you super fast and you are stagnant. But if you're on the ground watching the train go by, it's the train that is moving super fast and you are stagnant outside of the train. So, that is subjectivity, relativity. Everything is relative. Everything has its own bias, its own story, its own lens that we look through. And we have to constantly be looking for those biases. If you're struggling, you have to force yourself to move faster, right? If you're stuck in the muck because of pain, self-doubt, or failure, your brain is slowing you down. It's distorting everything to keep you in an emotional state that makes you what? Stay in the cave and never not be afraid. Never go out and risk anything. Your brain loves self-doubt, pain, emotional misery, because then you won't take risks and you won't die. And when you think about it like that, it's ridiculous. So when you're stuck in these things, when you're struggling, your brain is just trying to keep you from walking out the door and living in any kind of positivity and taking any kind of risk. It's just terrifying you into staying home all day. So when you're struggling, you have to force yourself to move faster. That's what you have to do. Speed up decision making. When you speed up action and learning, it shortens your perceived struggle. If something feels impossible, don't slow down. Accelerate. Lean into it. The slower you move, the harder things feel. The faster you move, the quicker you escape the illusion of struggle because it's relative. It's subjective. All right, here's another concept, the frame of reference trap. There is no absolute perspective, only frames of reference. That's from physics. Your entire reality is shaped by your frame of reference. What does this mean? If you feel stuck, it's not because you actually are stuck. It's because of your current frame of reference. You have to shift your perspective and the whole problem changes. So an example, if you're struggling in your career, you don't ask, why is this so hard? Why me? Why me? Why me? Instead, you have to challenge, push back, ask, if I were already successful, how would I see this problem differently? Every challenge becomes easier when viewed from the right perspective. Your struggles only feel hard because you're too zoomed in on them. You need to get what I call the aerial view. My coach talks about eavesdropping on her brain, which I love. And that's what the aerial view is for me. It is when you can begin to watch situations in real time, watch interacting with other people and having this third person perspective. And instead of being stuck in the emotional rigor of everything and tied up and, hijacked by your amygdala into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, instead you stay calm and you eavesdrop on the situation and your brain and the words and actions of other people in real time. And it's pretty brilliant. And for me, that always feels like, instead of being within the emotional turmoil of the storm that used to beat the crap out of me when I was in these, highly anxious situations at work, I have now gotten in the plane and gotten up into the atmosphere and I'm above the storm and I'm not involved in the emotional nonsense. And I'm watching the system because I know what it is. And that's what I'm doing. I'm watching, I'm eavesdropping, and I'm not emotional anymore. It doesn't matter what anybody says to me. It doesn't matter anymore because I'm not involved in the storm. I'm above it watching. Eavesdropping. It's the coolest thing when you can start eavesdropping on your own brain in real time. Yeah, that's a mind shift. You're never truly stuck. You're just trapped inside a bad frame of reference. You need to get out of the bad frame of reference. That whole forest for the trees kind of thing, you know? You're not seeing the forest because you're stuck staring at one tree. You got to back up, zoom out. We also call this the balcony view. Get up there and see everything for what it is. And for me, you need that 30,000 foot view of the storm system. You need to see it because we're talking about systems. What have you been immersed in your whole life? What are the assumptions that you have been living by? What are the words on loop in your brain, the stories, the I can't cook nonsense that you've told yourself your whole life, that I'm bad at money. I can't go out and start a business for myself. I have to work hard to make money, and I have no idea what money actually means. Exchange for value. That's all it means, right? Change your perspective. Stop believing assumptions. Most of them are lies. You have no evidence any of them are true. Change your perspective, and it changes who you are massively. Change your perspective, and the challenge changes too. You don't even know what's possible yet. You're living in complete unawareness of abundance and possibility. Most people don't struggle because they lack talent. They struggle because they don't even see what's possible for them. It's like you're trapped in an invisible box. But for you, it's like painted on the inside. And you cannot see beyond it. And yet there's so much more out there. It goes on and on and on. The abundance, the possibility. It's amazing. How could you possibly know the possibilities that are out there for you if you've never even tried to look, if you're not even aware of them? Most women under-earn by 30% or more simply because they were never shown how to negotiate or how to ask for more. Or even if they can ask for more, they've never been given permission to even consider the possibility of making more, pushing back, challenging a question, saying this is not enough because they're living in abundant thinking. Most people don't even know what abundant thinking is. Things aren't going to work. Things are going to break. You're going to be surprised by stuff you didn't expect. All kinds of things. You are supposed to face resistance. And your brain's going to yell at you about it. And you have to manage your brain. You have to learn to manage your brain because most people are picking up that baseball bat and beating the crap out of themselves. And you need to put down the bat because you will not recover from that in any way where you're going to move beyond the discomfort. You have to overcome the pain, the doubt. You have to understand that these things are an internal perspective. You have to dig in, and this is where you learn resilience. This is where you get tough. This is where those first principles thinking, first level skills thinking comes in, the super thinking. Because now you have data. Now you have experience. Now you have pushed through hard things that have taught you how to succeed through the hard things. You are now building evidence for rather than against. It is the hard, difficult things that we walk through that teach us how to succeed, that give us the skill to succeed. If we quit, we never develop the skills. We never develop the strength. We never develop the resilience needed to keep going. It's hard to do stuff you've never done before. And when you first start, it sucks. You're going to suck. You're going to be terrible at it. And then your brain's going to tell you to quit and that you're terrible and beat yourself up and go, slink off into regret and shame and, self-doubt and blame. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to listen to those thoughts. You can manage your brain. That's why you need to engage in things like, big questions, challenging, asking. That moves your brain to a place of creativity when you can actually rationalize and reason and tease apart all of these complicated things down to their fundamental elements. And finally, let's talk about some action and some thought work. So how do we train our brain for hard things. So here's a step-by-step process and some actionable strategies to make it more practical for you. So here's step one. Make hard things non-negotiable. Your brain must believe quitting is not an option. You don't get to quit. Sorry about you. When your brain wants you to quit, make quitting non-negotiable when it's in that situation. Step two, set pre-commitments. So high performers don't rely on willpower. They set structures. They have strategy. They have a plan. They don't just go into something and hope they get lucky. They walk in with a business plan, right? If they're starting a business. This is structure. You have to expect the difficulty and you have to have that pre-commitment to see it and reframe it as training, as discipline, as practice. You need structure. You need planning. You need expectation of what's to come. You need to train yourself in micro resilience. So if you avoid small discomforts, you'll quit big challenges. So you have to lean in to these little discomforts. You have to stretch and grow. You have to raise your tolerance of your level of discomfort tolerance. You have to up that. If you don't up that, you will quit big challenges. Then we need to shift how we define hard in general. That is the reframe. We reframe difficulty as training instead of failure, because then we don't have any excuses to quit because it's just part of it. It's like Yoda in Star Wars. Luke says he's trying and Yoda's like, there is no try. There's only do. Successful people are always doing, even if they're in the midst of trying, they're trying. It's not I did and I failed. It's forward motion, and the motion does create resistance. So let's just dive into why most people quit really quickly and talk a little bit about cognitive load theory. So here's a quote. Your brain has a processing limit. If it gets overloaded, it shuts down motivation. That comes from Dr. John Swaller, who studies cognitive load theory. And cognitive load theory explains why most people quit right before the breakthrough. So how does this theory apply to you? Your brain resists hard things, not because they're impossible, but because they require too much mental resources at one time. If you don't learn to manage the cognitive load, which is the mental resources your brain needs, and survival mechanism only does three things, right? It needs some help from the adult brain. It needs some thinking brain help here. It needs help managing the cognitive load, which is why you have to engage your thinking brain. Because survival mechanism stays safe, make sure that you're not dead, and conserves energy. That's all it does. So, when you're trying to deal with hard things and manage hard things, the cognitive load is too much for your survival mechanism. Then you get overwhelmed and you quit. So instead of tackling everything at once, you have to reduce cognitive load by focusing on one step at a time. Your brain doesn't resist hard things. It resists complex things. It doesn't know it's hard or not hard. It just sees complexity. It sees too much energy going out the door. And so if you can begin to see the cognitive load and how to sort of disperse that out in different ways, and most of that is just engaging your thinking brain and helping carry that cognitive load, that's a huge solution. You don't need more motivation. You need to make more challenges mentally simpler. You have to think them through. You have to break them down to that first principle thinking, right? The true elements, rather than letting everything get too complex. So how do we train our brain to do hard things? Your brain is built for comfort. So here is how to train it for challenge instead. If you want to consistently push through hard things, you cannot rely on motivation. You have to change the way your brain processes effort itself. A lot of people just wait till they feel like doing something. You're never going to get anything done that way. You need pre-built systems that make quitting non-negotiable. So here's the exact process to do that. Say, this is just what I do. It's what I do. It's, I love meeting people who run. They say, I'm a runner. Like, that's what they are. Now, I don't run, sometimes I go, it's fun, take the dog or whatever, but I'm not a runner. And it's so cool to meet people who, part of their identity is I'm a runner, which means that they run. That's what they do. They don't sit on the couch talking about running like I do. So if quitting is an option, your brain will take it. Remove the option. Set your pre-commitments because willpower is a lie. So a study from Harvard Behavioral Science in 2023 states that willpower is a limited resource, which is why high performers use pre-commitment strategies instead. You don't need to feel motivated because that is fleeting. You can't sit around waiting to feel like doing something. You just need to set yourself up to act automatically. And then you have to expect action creates resistance. So for an example, you want to go to the gym, book a class, pay in advance. You want to write every day, set a daily deadline and some kind of accountability check, whether that's another person or an alarm or whatever. You want to push through hard things, you announce your goal publicly. Pre-commit in a way that makes quitting inconvenient or even embarrassing. Now, we often will do it anyway, right? We're still going to quit and we'll make up excuses. But as many of these pre-strategic moves that you can make, the less chance you give your brain to quit, to find an out on you if you remove the option. And you remove friction for doing the hard thing because you make it easier to start than to avoid. Your brain is wired to take the path of least resistance, make success easier than quitting. And you train micro resilience. Small discomforts build big strength. If we go back to cognitive load theory for just a quick minute, it proves that your brain avoids discomfort if it's not regularly exposed to it. If you avoid these small discomforts, you'll quit the big challenges. You have got to expose your brain to small discomforts. If you train for small discomforts and expect them, you build mental toughness for the big ones. You can try the first no rule. Salespeople who get comfortable hearing no become fearless in negotiations. Work on your first no and then build up from there until you get comfortable. Deliberately do one slightly uncomfortable thing every day. It could be as small as ending your shower with cold water or making an uncomfortable phone call or doing that, cold call or whatever it is, taking a different route to work, something that is safe but uncomfortable. Your brain adapts to the discomfort if you train it to. You can also shift how you define hard. This is the reframing of difficulty as training. If we look at cognitive reframing research from Stanford in 2023, it shows that the way you label difficulty determines how your brain processes it. So if you see effort as struggle, your brain resists. If you see effort as training or discipline or practice or a staircase leading you to success based on lots and lots of evidence of failure, your brain embraces it. So by saying this is exhausting, your brain will fight back. You've convinced your brain that you are expelling way too much energy. If you say this is my training, then your brain will lean in because it thinks you're doing something to keep you safe. That's how you trick your brain. All right, friend, if you're interested in going any deeper in this, I've got a masterclass for every episode. So I'm happy to teach you the full framework to retrain your brain and overcome resistance by unlocking your next level of doing hard things. So you can grab that, The Science of Success, over at charliehornetscoaching.com/store. And don't forget, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body. Learning mental resilience is just as hard as learning how to achieve hard things. So you can always rely on therapy. Therapy should be accessible and practical for everybody, which is why I am partnering with BetterHelp. That's BetterHelp, HELP, who are sponsoring some of our episodes this spring because they make it easy to get the support that you need on your schedule. So if you want to grab 10% off your first month to give it a try, just go to BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of ARTOF, and you can grab that 10% there with my affiliate link. So friend, here's my final thought. Hard things are invitations to get stronger, to come out the other side of the refining fire. You say you want growth. You say you want success. Good. Because everything you want is sitting behind a door marked hard things. You have to get good at doing hard things. Most people see that sign and they turn back. They tell themselves the story that it's too much, it's too painful, it's too uncomfortable. But these are just loops of thought running through people's brains, assumptions, things they've never really broken down into the fundamental parts, asked the big questions, pushed back, challenged. You have to push back and challenge. Here's the truth. Discomfort is not your enemy. It is what makes you strong. The enemy is the version of you that stays the same, that's afraid of any change. Every hard thing you face is an opportunity to become something greater, to build the kind of resilience that makes you undeniable and unstoppable. So you want easy? Fine. But understand, easy won't give you the life beyond your wildest dreams. And if you're listening to this, I already know you're not built for easy. You're built for more. So step up, walk through that fire, because on the other side, that's where your next level is waiting. And remember, comfort is a slow death. Ask more big questions, because the version of you that comes through the other side of that and wins, they're waiting on the other side of this hard thing. I can't wait for you to meet them. I'll see you next week.